With the versatility of the flagship GoPro Hero 5 Black Edition camera, sometimes choosing the correct video settings can involve some trial and error for those less experienced. In this video I'll take you through my default and most preferred video capture settings guaranteed to get you the best shots. Bearing in mind users have 3 ways to change camera settings: the screen on the rear, using the buttons in the front display, as well as using the smartphone app. Although I generally tend to use the fantastic touchscreen display on the rear, setting up the camera before I begin capturing video. My go-to resolution is 2.7K since it allows more flexibility in post. You can zoom into the image without losing any quality when exporting in a full 1080p HD resolution, for example. The 2.7K resolution also allows us to use other features of the camera that are not available with 4K, which we'll come to shortly. 30 frames per second is my go-to frame rate, allowing more light into the sensor for a cleaner image while blending in nicely with other non-GoPro cameras I could be using at the time. Finally, I try to use the linear field of view most of the time to reduce image distortion. If you're in a wide open space, in an open field for example, you won't notice the image distortion with the wide setting as much, but for anything else, linear works great. With the basic capture settings chosen, we'll move on to other video settings, ProTune being the first that gets enabled. The colour profile I usually choose is GoPro, as I feel it does a pretty good job minimizing the colour corrections needed in post. Those looking for greater control over colours would choose the flat option. I keep the white balance set as auto since the GoPro does a great job at setting the white balance itself. I try to keep the ISO as low as possible most of the time, only changing this if I really need to. Even then I wouldn't go over 1600 as you'll end up getting too much noise in the footage, making it almost unusable. Shutter speed, again I'll leave at auto and let the camera decide on which to use depending upon the lighting conditions I'm currently in. Setting this to auto also enables the flexibility of using exposure compensation, which affects the brightness of the video, allowing you to change the brightness in different lighting environments, so this depends upon what you're shooting and the lighting or weather conditions on the day. The default sharpness is set to high, but I find this makes the shot look a little unnatural, so I tend to set this to medium or low, increasing sharpness in post if the need arises. Action cameras generally do not capture the best audio quality, so I'm not generally fussed about the audio settings, using it to only sync audio with my external audio capture device if need be. With ProTune settings now set, we swipe left to move to video stabilization. This would not be available if shooting in 4K, hence the reason why I generally choose 2.7K, but I tend to use this if the need arises. Low light settings are not available to me as I'm already capturing at 30 frames per second, but if you're shooting higher this will automatically drop the frames per second down if light levels drop. And again, I do not tend to bother with audio controls too much, letting the GoPro pick up any audio which I later use for synchronizing any other external audio capture device in post. Finally, just quickly touching on general camera settings, I'd recommend keeping any wireless connectivity off, as well as voice control options switched off as well, saving some precious battery power you can otherwise use on shooting video. Voice control is a nice feature and works pretty well, but not something I'd use very often, so I'd rather use that extra battery power on capturing a few more minutes of video. The screen brightness also drops down to around 50%, again in an attempt to save a little more battery power. Finally, I sometimes switch off the front LED as well as disable any beeps the camera makes for times when I'm shooting in a quieter environment and do not want to cause any disturbances or let others know that I'm capturing video. Otherwise, I leave all other settings as they are. It does take a little playing around to get the settings that really suit you and your shooting scenario best, but hopefully that gives you a good starting point, and using these settings should give you a fantastic quality image.